Welcome to Story North's presentation of Books and Bars, the Twin Cities' most popular and best book club. This episode features a discussion of The Graveyard Book, Neil Gaiman's novel about a boy raised by ghosts. It was recorded in front of a live audience at Indeed Tap Room in Minneapolis, Minnesota on November 10th, 2015. Please forgive the sound quality of this episode. We had some technical difficulties recording for the first time at this venue. And now your host of Books and Bars, Jeff Kamen.
Northeast Minneapolis. This is the second time Books and Bars has been here at Indeed. I'd like to thank Indeed again for having us. Again, Kayla and Emil are serving you tonight, so please be kind to them. If you could, bring up your empty glassware. That definitely helps them. I'm going to show you an example of that. I have an empty right here. I'm going to bring it to Kayla and Emil. I have two. If anyone wants to hand me more, I only have one hand right now. I don't want to drop them. My name is Jeff Kamen. Who's never been to Books and Bars before? Anyone here for the first time? Welcome. Oh, what a great smile you have. What nice, friendly smiles you guys. Welcome. Thanks for coming. The way it works, you guys, is you raise your hand. I bring you this microphone. Tell us your name, and then make your comment, ask your question. Today is Neil Gaiman's 55th birthday. I was accused of being a Neil Gaiman stalker at the last event. I'd like to refute that right now and just say, happy birthday, Neil. I'm not stalking you. I like your book, and I've gathered hundreds of people to talk about it. But we're not getting weird. We're not showing up in the woods of Wisconsin looking for your old house or anything. You know, we invited you here tonight. It's nothing weird. It's totally cool. Not stalking you. So here's the funny thing, though. The book tonight is The Graveyard Book, and I thought it would be a great idea to read this with my kids. I still stand behind that. My kids are 9 and 11, but there are some kids who maybe this isn't the right book for, right? So there's a middle grade version of Books and Bars called Books and Brownies, and they meet on Monday at Wild Rumpus. And I had the elementary school receptionist read me the Riot Act after reading only the first few paragraphs of this book with her son. It was like, what did you suggest? There is a family that is murdered by what? My kid is freaking out and she keeps saying she's gonna come to Books and Bars, and now she's like, thinks I'm some kind of freak, and my kid has to go to a new school. So thank you, Neil Gaiman. I gotta move. I gotta find another school district. So thanks for writing such wonderfully creepy books. Neil Gaiman, if you don't know, the guy was born, like I said, 55 years ago today. He was born in England. He, for a while, I don't know if he still has a place just outside of the Twin Cities in the woods in Wisconsin. I heard he's got a place. I mean, it's not like I was maybe outside of Harvard or something with his new wife, and just had his fourth kid. First with her. He's won so many awards that, there's just a whole separate sheet to name them all. But we've read him before, and, we don't repeat authors a lot at Books and Bars, but we have read The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which also had Liza Hempstock, a character in this book. It was nice to see her again. And we have read Anansi Boys, which has some characters that are in American Gods. And then I've also read the Sandman series with some others here, and I know there's probably many of you who have read even more Neil Gaiman. Why did we read him 3 times? What is it about him that we like or don't like? What did you guys think of this one? Anyone read the Graveyard Book for the first time? Anyone read Neil Gaiman for the first time and want to make a comment? That always gets the hands down, the part about they don't want to make a comment. They're like showing me the hand, but then not using their voice. But that's okay. That's okay. How about an old friend of Books and Bars who does this all the time? Show us how it's done. Show us how someone else with a microphone makes a comment or asks a question. Jump on in. Tell them your name. Go for it.
Hi, I'm James, and I just want to thank you for giving us a little bit of confection this month as opposed to the really sour book that we had last month. So it's a nice little, not my typical cup of tea, but it was a nice, enjoyable little confection for the holidays. I can see.
For the holidays, yes, the holiday that is Halloween. A confection for the holidays. Would anyone else think of this as a kind of a candy sweet confection? So this was a discussion in St. Paul last time. We actually found that some people thought, well, does Neil Gaiman write something here that has enough meat on the bone? Is there enough a weight to this? Is there enough to talk about? And Gaiman himself has had to almost defend this idea of being called, a writer of escapist fare. And this is what he said about it. People often ask me, how do you feel about the fact that what you write is fundamentally escapist? And I say, well, the big thing for me is there's nothing wrong with escape. Someone who is in a difficult or impossible situation, who is offered an unlocked door to somewhere else that they can go through, and they can go through and they can get away, and then they can genuinely get away. And not only do they get away, but while they're away, they learn things and gather armor and gather knowledge, weapons that they can take back into their prison and make it better. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. And then he goes on to quote Tolkien and says, the only people who are against escape are jailers.
I would have to disagree that he writes escapist, although the last couple books have been on the down low. But he wrote one of the great books of the last 20 or 30 years, which is American Gods. Yeah. There's no question that that's not escapist. It's a fantastic Odyssey book. And what he can do is take things that you and I see every day and make a story out of it. For example, a graveyard. And what he did in American Gods, I don't know if your mothers did this, but my mother in the 50s would turn on the TV and say, well, the gods of television are clearly. So this is something I heard all my life. I never thought of making a book. The man can take the ordinary and make it extraordinary. Oh, my name is Pat.
Thanks, Pat. Hi.
Well, my name is Mary, and as I started reading it, I actually was drawn to the illustrations, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm back in second grade, or third grade or fourth grade, and I was kind of not really hooked into the book. But as I got more into it, and I was drawn to I'm really into graveyards myself, and so I was into the etchings and into the characters of the graveyards, and the people in the graves. Then I started being drawn into the characters themselves, and I love history, and then I got more into it, and with the ending, I just didn't see that. So he is a good layer of people historically and then individually and how they all lay themselves out. So I actually thought it was a really good book, but at first I was thinking I was like reading a child's book, something I read when I was in the third or fourth grade.
My name's Terry, and I'm a former teenage gravedigger, so I have that on my resume. If you were St. Paul Books and Bars, I revealed that once before. The thing I liked about this book was it was more like a plot-driven novel because there was always some tension and something that was about to happen that you had to worry about and read, and so I thought it was a very easy read. I enjoyed the last book we read here, but I thought this one was a lot more readable to me. Yes.
I'm Brian. So I'm curious, because there's another group that's reading this book in graphic novel form, if anybody read that version before, after, during, whatever. I didn't, actually when I started reading it, I didn't know there was a graphic novel. So when I started reading this, I thought, how are we going to do this for Mirror Comics? There's, it just didn't. Yeah, and of course I read electronics, so it's the etchings and all that kind of stuff are just tiny. So I was really curious, and then I found out today, so I bought the graphic novels. It seems like there's a lot of stuff missing as far as background dialogue in the graphic novels.
So if you've never heard Neil Gaiman read, he's one of the best readers, and this is just going to get added to you guys thinking I'm a stalker, but I listened to the audio, I read the book, and I read the graphic novels. Yes, I'm a fanboy. Okay, a fanboy. Because actually, do I get a slow clap for that? Yeah, please, thank you. So I read this book. 3 times, and this will be my second of 4 discussions on it. Even though one will be with middle grade kids who are probably piddling their pants and parents that are mad at me. That's on Monday. I'm excited. And one will be about the graphic novel, which is different, but. And it doesn't use any of the same Dave McKean illustrations or any of the illustrations that I see some other people have from the Scholastic edition. There's been other artwork to go along with this. So as to whether it's for a YA audience or an adult audience, Neil Gaiman himself has said he had a very limited audience in mind writing it, and it was himself. And he's not sure. He goes, "I'm not sure I've ever written anything so much to please myself. When it was done, I gave it to people to read, and various publishers decided that kids liked it. But adults like it in a completely different way, and we had to figure out how we could market it to both." It started from over 20 years ago. He was living in a little Sussex town in a tall house across the lane from a graveyard. And they didn't have a garden, and their 18-month-old son was riding his tricycle. And he tried riding him in the house, and they would have died because there were stairs everywhere. So Neil would take him to down the stairs and take him to the graveyard, and his 18-month-old son would ride a tricycle around the graveyard. And as he watched him, he got the idea of doing something like the Jungle Book, which this is slightly modeled on, and this idea of a boy being raised instead of being raised by animals in the jungle, by ghosts and other ghouls and the like in the graveyard. He wanted to write this many years ago, but he didn't think he was a good enough writer to do it until like 20-some years later. He kept putting it off. One of the chapters, I believe is chapter 4, was originally published as a short story in another collection of his. One of the things we talked about before is whether these, it feels very episodic in nature. The different, we see Bod at different times in his life. And it's like little short stories that make a greater novel or a whole. Any thoughts on that or anything else we've touched on? I see an old friend with a fresh hand.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a school librarian. But we said over dinner about like books for children. What's your name? Mary. So when Mary was talking about that, like I totally connected with that hardcore. And to me, like, are not some of the greatest books things that apply to a wide variety of audiences? Like, I love coming here because you have, like, you can kind of learn a little bit about the author's intent, but, like, we each have such a different reader's experience, and you have such a different experience from when you first read something and then come back and read it. And to me, the best literature are things that you've either read as a child and when you come back it still holds up, or you can take something that may have been intended for a child and as an adult still really connect to it. Like, that's why Pixar movies are so great. Has anybody not seen Inside Out? Because that's just a travesty, though. So I think, like, that is one of the reasons why, like, I love Neil Gaiman and why, as an adult, I read a lot of YA lit because it applies to the common human experience.
Anyone else? Who else had a hand up?
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I wanted to talk about the audiobook because that's how I was introduced to Neil Gaiman through American Gods. I was very convinced of the excellence of the way he reworked the whole, heroic structure and all that kind of stuff. But then, so I was taking a long road trip and I needed a book. So I got this. It had just come out and I was excited. If you haven't read it, I would say it's one of the best ways to read Neil Gaiman is to have him read it to you because he really is a storyteller. And I know that there's another version where there's a full cast, and I've heard some varying reports on it. But the one that I had, I can't compare because I haven't heard. But for that book was just wonderful because he read it to me, and I know that's how the best audiobooks are, but. It was to me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's really hard to compete with that because in my house we normally read to the kids at bedtime, but with this one I'm setting up a little external speaker and I play it from my phone and they want Neil to read it. And there's a couple times where Rachel and I have subbed in and it's like, can you let the other guy read it again? Just better, it's the accents and all that stuff. books. You know what I mean? And I was like, I know it's better. I was in a graveyard walking my dog, listening to it on Halloween. Like in chapter 6. It was perfect. It was so good. And I was looking for Neil everywhere, and I couldn't. I'm not stalking him. This is not a podcast, people. This is really embarrassing. We're going to edit all this out. I saw another hand over here.
I guess what struck me, I think you said this about being raised by ghosts, and one way, it's a conceit, like the Jungle Book, being raised by animals, but I think as an adult reading this, the older I get, the more I realize that I am being raised by ghosts. I mean, I'm being raised by, the ghosts of my grandmothers especially, or like I feel like are always looking over my shoulder and thinking of, how they're guiding me going on. And I'm sure we all have ghosts who are informing our decisions as we go forward and further.
All right, first comment to give me a chill wins a candle. That was awesome. We're all being raised by ghosts. You win the Frostbeard Studio Put Warm candle for that, because we are being raised by ghosts. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I like that. There's still a Sexy Librarian candle for another comment that gives somebody the chills. Maybe it's me. Gaiman has also said, so, going back to the start of this, where we have the man Jack, right, and he murders the family. He has said, I'm already getting emails telling me that given the problems in England with knife crime, the idea of starting a book, there was a hand in the darkness and it held a knife, is wrong, and I should have completely rethought my beginning. Nope, that's the beginning. If you don't get through 3 pages and actually understand that there is a man out there and he has a knife and he wants to kill a baby, then the idea that this child is going to spend 16 years in a graveyard instead of going out into the world doesn't make any sense. He has to be staying there because it's safe. Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on Jack, who we open with, and the start of this? And Bod? Anyone? One okay? Don't touch the broken glass. Hold on. We'll get something.
I'm Ashley. So, I don't want to be the first downer, really. I liked it, but I felt like... I felt like there were too many parallels to Harry Potter. It was the boy who lived. I mean, the family dies, the baby lives, the man's still out there trying to get to him. He's got this guardian caretaker who's a whole lot like Sirius Black in a lot of ways. There were so many. It was like the first thing I thought of in the opening scene, and I couldn't get it out of my head. He's got like spells to protect himself and protect his friends. He can make himself invisible, kind of like when you have an invisibility cloak. It was just too many parallels.
What if you found out that Neil Gaiman had never heard of Harry Potter, and I could prove it? Okay, no, I'm just kidding. We had a hand shoot up about Harry Potter. We read Harry Potter at Books and Bars. You guys remember that? All 7 books. Yeah. We had people from Hufflepuff show up. Yeah. So we'll talk more about that in a second when we talk about Star Wars.
My name is Kristen, and as soon as my hand shut up, my husband was like, "Oh, it's okay, just calm down." I put it up totally like Hermione. Like, I'm thinking it's her. And actually, I think the last speaker has a great point, which is that Neil Gaiman is derivative. And this book is derivative. Now, she said it reminded her a lot of Harry Potter, but The Boy Who Lived is an iconic story throughout time, because if you think about it, Jesus was the boy who lived, and Moses was the boy who lived, and Zeus was the boy who lived.
You guys heard of those?
Yep.
She's trying to get a candle now.
I hate candles. Anyway, sometimes troubles me about Gaiman is that he reuses his stories. That, you've got the Graveyard Book, but then you've got the Graveyard Book by somebody else illustrated, and then you've got the 2-volume graphic novel, right? And so one thing comes out and it gets turned into something else and turned into something else as opposed to new and new things. So I like him, but I don't love him or want to stalk him, say. It's good. This is a good book. I enjoyed it. My 2 children, who are in 4th and 6th grade, enjoyed it. Reading to them. It won the Newbery Award, so it is a kid-approved book. But it's complicated, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, that same educator at the school was mad about Goodnight Moon too. She's like, Goodnight Mush? What is that? What is that all about? And I was like, I didn't suggest that one, no. Okay, so this is true. Gaiman does have a pattern, right? Okay, so beneath the everyday, below the skin of the humdrum, is a dark other world, and ordinary people, lost, lonely people. They can find their way there if they are very brave or very lucky. An ordinary office worker steps through a doorway into a world of steampunk, gangsters, and ancient legends hidden under London, name it. Neverwhere. An ex-con is taken on a road trip to a land where all the gods of America are real. A farm boy steps over a gate into fairyland to bring back a piece of a star for his sweetheart. A little girl whose parents neglect her finds her way into a mirror home with mirror parents whose eyes are buttons. And a little boy escapes a massacre and is raised by ghosts in a graveyard. Escape, adventure. A Jedi craves not these things. Oh no, that's next month. The magical door in the wall that lets you out of your life and into a new one. Gaiman has perfected that formula and nobody does it better. No wonder his readers love him like a drug. Who loves him like a drug? Come on, you're not stalking him. But now let's hear the other side. Who loves him a bit more? Tell us what you love about it. Or what you love about Graveyard Book.
I think what I loved about it the most is that I have a 7th grade son. And so it's nice when I have a book that both of us can read and both of us can love and talk about at the same time. Now, granted, he did not finish it. I even invited him to come with tonight. But he's kind of a lazy 7th grader who had to play Minecraft, so he couldn't finish the book. So he's home playing Minecraft right now, I'm sure. But I think I just love the fact that I can sit down with my kid and love something, and he loves something that we both read at the same time.
That's great. We have a fresh hand over here. Thank you.
Okay, I apologize in advance if this is going to be kind of a long response. This goes along with a couple points I wanted to make. So, I love Neil Gaiman. His genre, yes, even if you think that he is derivative or, that he tells stories that people have already told, that is arguably my favorite genre of literature. Like, I love when people can take something that's already been done and twist it and make it their own. And I don't know if anybody has got into Sleeper and the Spindle yet, his newest graphic one.
Available here.
Exactly, that's why I brought that one up. But yeah, I love that. I love when authors can take something and make it their own, and I feel like he does that very, very well. That being said, it doesn't always happen with me when I read that I want to reread something immediately after finishing it. And I first read The Graveyard Book last year, and it was one that was like, oh, I want to reread this right now. But I have my Goodreads book challenge, and I was like, no, I can't. I gotta keep going with different books. Can't reread the same one. So now, rereading it a year later, I still loved it just as much as I did a year ago. And I was trying to figure out what it was about it that 2 times now, a year apart, has drawn me into it so much. And I think that he makes you really care about this boy who's being raised by ghosts, because what a weird situation that is of, there's this kid who has people who care about him so much, but at the same time, they can only do so much to be protective of him, because once he leaves the safety of that spot, well, he's on his own. And it struck me that it's like, well, I've always been one of those people who, my mom always said that I have Peter Pan syndrome, and just growing up is really scary to me. And reading this book both last year and this year, I had the same feeling of like, this book is the epitome of a coming-of-age tale of, Bod goes through life assimilating to how things are in the graveyard and being used to that, but as he gets older and starts, venturing out more and starting to read books and knowing that there's more of a world out there than just within his little enclosed space, that's all of us. That is, everybody comes to this. And then at the end, 2 times in a row, I cried during the ending when he is saying goodbye to Silas, because there does come that point where you just have to go off and do your own thing, and that's just what life is. But he does it in such a way that it's not overwhelming or beating you over the head with it, but you actually become invested in these characters, and you're like, oh, well, now you wish Bob luck. That I hope that he can handle it out there in the world of the living. And what she said, the last speaker, about reading it with her son and enjoying the fact that they can do that together, I've hit the point, and something gets sappy, where I start thinking about a future where, I am a mom, and it's books, as I read, I think, is this something that I would want to read with my kids someday? Like, at what age would I read this with a kid? And this is one that, very much is like, yeah, my kids, they're going to hear this story so many times because it struck with me, it'll stick with them, that, I don't know, I don't think it's fair to say that it's just derivative and another of the same, because, I don't know, it's got its own character to it.
Thank you. I was completely touched by it. I was lucky that this wasn't another classic example of dad reading to his kids and starting to choke up while he was reading it, because someone else was reading it and I could hide the tears like I will behind giant IMAX 3D glasses when I'm at Star Wars next month in front of them. That's a reason to see it in 3D, everyone. It's a great way to hide your tears. So yeah, I felt it. Let's show of hands. Who was touched? I mean, who maybe shed a tear? Who shed a tear about this situation? I want to look around. Tony is the first guy I saw to admit shedding a tear. That's a candle-worthy tear that he just shed. I'm proud of any guy that raises his hand in front of others and says, I'm a sexy librarian who cries in front of my kids. Here you go, Tony. Smell this. It smells great. Frostbeard Studio, Roxy and Tom right over there. You can meet them. They're on the bench. They make these fine products. I was completely touched by it. He's like the classic orphan of literature, right? But then he has like this adopted family, this family that can't really be with him forever. They have to just kind of get him to a certain point and push him out of the nest, and he does have to say goodbye to them. Will he ever see them again? Maybe. Maybe he'll run into Silas in another Neil Gaiman book in some adventure, if he ever needs him, or But I don't know. Yeah.
I have to say, I was really jealous of Scarlett and his relationship, because I don't know. I mean, we've all had our imaginary friend or two. Maybe I've had 3 or 4. But I mean, don't we all want to meet our imaginary friend and have them come back and visit us again and again? And I mean, it's just like, I just was so excited when she came back, and then they rekindled their friendship and they bonded again, and I was like, yay. And then they had to say goodbye to each other. I mean, that's when I was in tears, because I was like, if I could see my imaginary friend again, I mean, I'd be so excited.
He just said bing bong, inside out reference. Well, but what about the fact that your imaginary friend, you find out, actually wasn't imaginary? There was some different circumstances, but yeah, that sort of validation. But then, yeah, he's not ever able to, she decides that he is no better than, in her eyes, the people that, he was protecting her from, and loses her in that way. Nobody owns. Do you think about that? His name? Nobody owns. Terry, you have your hand?
I was just going to share that my imaginary friend played with the neighbor kids, so it wasn't such a good thing.
This guy. You should open with a Type 5 next time on grave digging. That's great stuff. That was like Stephen Wright. That was awesome. That was good. That was a good line. I like it. Anyone else? Hi, fresh hand over here.
Hi, I'm Fresh Hand Jessica. That's not my Twitter handle. I would like to discuss the role of his ghost parents a little bit more, because we don't see a lot of them, and I was a little curious about that because you think that he kind of set the stage for a little bit more of the mundane stuff, so that when he does have these adventures that he goes into, it's very clear that they're adventures, instead of getting like one chapter when he's 5 and does this, and then one chapter when he's 8 and does that, and it just seems very disconnected, and you don't see a lot of like how boring it must be in a graveyard all day sometimes, because kids get bored. Parents get bored. People get bored. It's just sometimes boring. So I'd like to discuss that a little bit.
Well, so first he learns his letters, right, and then he gets really sort of like real history lessons from all of the dead people there, so that when he actually does get a chance to go to school, he is the teacher saying, "Oh, is that the kid who's always like saying stuff like, oh, it didn't happen that way," and just giving these sort of stories from history that no one else ever heard of. So, I mean, he was obviously talking to a lot of the other ghosts. It does seem as though Silas, as a guardian, is much more of, in some ways, a father figure to him, or much more of someone he is closer to and relies on more and needs more than maybe the Owenses, right? Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on his ghost parents?
Hi, I'm Stephanie. And actually thought about, it's a line in the book where he talks about it takes a graveyard to raise a boy. And I was thinking actually that it's very much our culture to think of a child being raised just by their parents, and the time I've spent in other cultures, like, that's not really the case. Like, the child might be at aunties, and they're at uncles, and then they're at grandmas, and they say it's their cousin, but is it really their cousin? Not by blood. But I was thinking that as I read the book, in some ways, he's kind of this child who's being passed around all the inhabitants of the graveyard, and Silas, being the only one who is not dead, even though he's not alive, kind of has a different connection to him than, say, the people who are raising him, and call them, like, I think there's still certainly maternal and paternal things in the book, but I think it's probably a different experience than what we're used to in a, like, I live in my house with my parents and that's where I live, to be kind of being passed around between all of the inhabitants.
It does take a graveyard or a village. Is there a Silas in your life, you know?
Hi, I'm Beverly. And I was actually thinking about that. I listened to an audiobook as well. Now maybe this is empty nest syndrome speaking. One's fledged, the other one's about to. But, in a way they're kind of fantasy parents. If you think about, young adult, they're there. They don't really interfere much, but they encourage him. They tell him they're proud of him. And then when it's time for him to go, they just fade away. You know what I mean? It's like they don't have to go visit. They're like, you'll be back when you're dead. No demands.
I love it. If I had another candle, I'd give you one. You can get one at Cross Creek Studio. I love the idea of the fancy parent that just, you know what, you can't even hug me, Mom. Like, too much. You just disappear, Mom. You know what, I'll be back when I'm dead. Love you.
Here's Melissa. I really like the comment to the fantasy parents, but it was kind of an interesting theme throughout the book, the kind of idea of how you protect the ones you love, and it is kind of the fantasy parents who are nurturing and they're there when you need them and they fade away when you don't, and Silas being the kind of one to step in and kind of let him have some freedom while still trying to kind of rein it in, and he's got his protectors who are out there kind of fighting on his behalf, even though whether he's aware of it or not, and they kind of don't ask for anything in return, and that's what they do. And then there's that creepy Sleer, whose idea of protecting the one it loves is just to literally drag it into the deepest, darkest hole and smother it and never let it go. So that was kind of a fun, and then Scarlet too, which we talked about, the way that I saw that he kind of they protected her is that they let her go and she doesn't remember, and that was kind of a hard moment too. But there's kind of, some fun different relationships in there, just how you look after the ones that you love.
I like that parallel within the Sleer is the nightmare mother that smothers you and Sleer, stop hugging me so much, Sleer. I'm not your little bastard. Let's talk about Silas, yeah. Okay. I asked, yeah. You guys something on Silas? Whatever you got in, yeah, let's bring him in.
Hi, my name's Maggie. I'm listening to the fullcast version, and it's just a sidebar. Love the fact that they're using bits and snippets of the Sansom John Smith proverb to tie the chapters together. Just a nice little musical thing. Silas is a part of my comment. I think one of the most interesting statements that God makes, he's about 11, and Silas is trying to convince him not to leave the graveyard to go to school because Jack is out there and it's dangerous. And God says, well, I'd just be dead. What's the big deal? I'd still be here. So that lack of fear, the lack of separation between the living and the dead, he doesn't see that. There's no fear. It's just a different state of being for him, and it doesn't bother him.
It's a really good point. It's really interesting because even though he has that sort of, no fear of death and that he can just, go on, he still needs that push from his parents and Silas to live the life first, though. And he's almost just like, well, I'm just going to be here, right? Like, he doesn't want to leave here, so he's ready to just accept death if it comes and not so worried about it. But they need to show him that, we all lived and now we're here forever, but you need to go do the living part first. Like, we need to get you out there, and don't be afraid to live. And he gets that from reading books and then wanting to go on adventures and see the world, and then ready to leave the nest. Hi.
I have a question. Did Silas know about the prophecy about the boy who would be living but kind of dead, who would take down the Jacks? Did Silas know about that?
I think he did because Silas was part of that the crew that was out in the different cities destroying the guard, the honor guard. That's where Lupesco was with him, and they were destroying them in Australia and everywhere else, and that's why Silas was gone a bunch of the time, right?
What were the Jacks doing that was so destructive that they had to be taken down?
So the Jacks had magic, and there was a prophecy from like 5,000 years ago, or like from the Egyptian times, that it was very biblical sounding that a child was going to be born that would take away their this is very Harry Potter. At first, it's the Bible, okay? Well, Harry Potter, well, the Bible's a lot like Harry Potter, you guys. Totally. Come on. This is King James and his Bible. His adaptation is totally a ripoff of J.K. Rowling. So the Jacks were trying to, similar to what the Egyptians did to the Jews of killing the firstborns, but the Jacks were trying to kill any kid who could have been the one that was going to take away their magic. And they had been doing this for 5,000 years. Anyone else want to say anything more? Anyone else kill any babies? Oh, look how fast the hands go down! You liars! Just kidding.
There's kind of a loophole there, because couldn't they have just left him in the graveyard and then stayed away from him and they would have lived longer? Instead they went after him and he killed him? I'm kidding about it.
Overheard, that's not how prophecies work in stories. Anyone want to tell us how they work in stories?
I really liked, and I think this ties in with the derivative part of it, but I loved Silas and the rest of the honor guard, and you would not even understand them if you weren't steeped in our culture. They never call Silas a vampire, and they never call him this a werewolf, this Lupesco werewolf. And now I want to figure out what the guy with the wing was who was holding the pig for luck. Because that was the best. I was like, what do you want? And I didn't know if that was just, and the whole reading the gravestones, and now I want to go to a graveyard in England because do they have way cooler gravestones than we do? Because there's sayings on each one of them. I've got to figure that out before I die now because I want a good one.
I'm glad you have a candle still. So, speaking of which, Mother Slaughter, her gravestone just says "Laugh Now." Can anyone tell me who Mother Slaughter is? Who Mother Slaughter maybe is in real life or represents? Anyone look into this? Been trying to figure this out. Think about it. If anyone finds it out, raise their hand and let me know who you think Mother Slaughter is.
I wanted to respond to two things. One, ultimate evil always has a fatal flaw, and so that's how this was set up to be. You know, God had to be able to overcome, because evil, you know, at least in the world that Neil Gaiman writes in, there's always a balance. And now I've forgotten what my second thing is.
Oh, she gave it to me. So I thought the Jacks were kind of like, you know, maybe a month ahead of myself here, but the Empire and Silas and Miss Lepescu were kind of like Jedis. That would make Bod Luke.
Again, that's kind of biblical. Yeah. Sure, yeah. Sure. I see another hand going up from a young Jedi. Padawan.
I'm Caitlin, and I share a birthday with Neil Gaiman.
Happy birthday, Caitlin!
So maybe I'm almost as cool as Neil Gaiman. Probably not. But, no. Thanks.
We'll see if I start stalking you.
Please don't, Jeff. I think I'm okay. You're watching it? Okay. So, because you're not raising your hand, my husband suggested perhaps he's Obi-Wan, that Silas is Obi-Wan. In this, or Dumbledore. Or some combination of the two.
I love it. You guys are in the right house. You do know, next month's book is all about Star Wars, so I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling like I won't be the only one in costume next month, am I right? Am I right, you guys? Well, come on, what if there's more prizes? Come on, we talked about this last week at St. Paul. We want to dress up. Don't be afraid. You dressed up for Harry Potter. You can dress up for Star Wars. How about the scariest character of all, the 33rd President of the United States? You know who that is? Have you guys looked that up? Harry S. Truman dropping the atom bomb and then becoming a ghoul in Ghoulheim? Is that what happens? What is Neil trying to say there? Any thoughts on that? Oh, I got this squint eye looking at me. You're not going to like this.
This is Kristen again. I took it as they were not, it wasn't Harry Truman, that they were just ghouls, and once they had their memories wiped or their memories went away, they just picked famous names and said, oh, I'm the king of the universe and I'm the 33rd president or whoever else. And so it's not really Truman.
Well, that's what you think. But does anyone else think that that's Neil trying to say something that, he takes the president who, drops the atom bomb and makes him a ghoul and kind of puts him in hell, right? I don't know. It seems intentional. He picked that number, right? I don't know. Maybe. He didn't pick the 16th president to be a ghoul.
My memory returned. It was on the subject of good epitaphs and go to Key West. It has the penultimate one. I told you I was sick.
Anyone know what they want on their tombstone? And don't say cheese or pepperoni. It's a classic Wisconsin joke, though. Tombstone frozen pizza. What do you want on your tombstone? We can arrange that. Yes. How are you? Thanks for shouting out.
I'm Anne. You asked. I just recently heard what I should have on my tombstone. It was a tombstone epitaph for atheists, all dressed up and nowhere to go. I also wanted to mention that I live across the street from a cemetery, and so now listening to this has given me a whole different perspective on it, which is kind of fun, yeah. I did. I listened to the book quite a while ago, and I think my comments, my comments from everything else, derivative, so what? Is that a problem? And I guess as far as escapism, I look at it as more otherworldly for what he has written. And then, especially with the graveyard, perfect place for otherworldliness. Also, my daughter introduced me to Neil Gaiman. She's 26 tomorrow. So, yeah, the same age as most of the people in the room. So anyway, yeah, I think it's great to read with your kids as well, even though a lot of people don't approve of it, because when my kids were little, we used to use the ALA list of fan books for a reading list. I'm a librarian too.
Oh, there's some librarian love going on here. That's fantastic. Thanks, Ann. All dressed up with no place to go. Well, you can always dress up and come to Books and Bars. Next month, I recommend Star Wars attire, and I'm not even kidding. I'm not kidding, you guys. I want to see equal representatives of the Empire and the Jedi. It'll be fun. It's going to be fun. I want some moisture farmers up in here. I want someone to get those power converters at Tachi Station.
Hi. So as we're talking about, headstones and epitaphs and everything, it made me think of Bod's relationship with Liza when that first started, where that's like the one thing that she really, really wants. And, there's this big, this big misunderstanding between the people who are buried in the consecrated ground of the graveyard and then those who are out in the unconsecrated ground. And, everybody seems very weirded out and tentative and, oh, you're hanging out with who? What you're the witch girl? What are you doing? And they're all very, skeptical of Bod becoming friends with her and think that she's like this horrible person that he should just stay away from. When really, her one thing is she just wants somebody to recognize that she's there, that she existed, she is still in this place, and that's all she wants is a headstone. And this one little tiny request that she wants ends up getting Bod into the first of his really big troubles of leaving the cemetery, is going out and finding a way to get her a headstone. And I just love this friendship between them, especially when he starts getting older and she doesn't want to talk to him anymore, and his dad's like, well, she liked you as a little boy, but now you're kind of grown up and women are kind of fickle, so, what can you do? And I don't know, I just thought that was a very sweet, very real friendship that they had going on, all because of a headstone.
And that brings us a nice moment with the Owenses talking about how they first met and how they have different recollections of it. But Mr. Owens is very certain that, after his wife chimes in, that no, actually it was this way, that sort of thing. I like that. Were you surprised about who Jay Frost turned out to be, or did you know that it was the man Jack? Was there a point at which you were surprised, or did you know? Any thoughts on that? I think he does a pretty good job of giving you clues, but then also still surprising you in the sense that there's some good misdirection and lies. And what's interesting, if you do look at the graphic novel version, there's different artists that take it on and they do a deal of he's aged and he looks slightly different. Like how Scarlett talks about how he no longer looked like the kind old man when he was in full-on Killer Jack mode. And then there were times when he was scared when she could actually see that it was still that old Jay Frost. Any thoughts on Jack or Jay? I see a fresh hand over here.
One thing's fresh tonight. You make it fresh? So Jack let's talk about Jack. Neil Gaiman has really good villains. To the extent that I actually get more interested in the villains themselves, I kind of thought that Bob was an asshole. I didn't like the book. He and the ghost, that was nice. I wanted to learn more about Jack because he's in it for survival. He's in it to kind of live his life, and he has to do this whole thing, and he has his own society. And really what goes on with him is a type of genocide. So Bod is nice to ghosts and things that are more or less confined to a very small world. And Jack is out and exuberant and has his own type of pleasure in life, and his people are being exterminated. So just because Bod is the character who we see most often, and we assume that he's the good person, someone said evil in reference to Jack. But Jack, all he's trying to do is survive with his other Jacks who are being exterminated. So we assume evil because, I am a little bit fresh. So we assume Bod is good because we see him most often, but he's not actually nice to really anybody who's living. Whereas we know the truth. Scarlet. But that's, I mean, we don't really know those kids. It just randomly kind of does something because he just feels a certain way. So we don't know why he feels things. Whereas we know Jack, as a mother or an aunt, we hear about where he's talking to the lady or whatever, he smells something or whatnot. So we know he has family and he has concerns and cares, but we just assume he's bad because he has a knife and killed him. Sometimes you gotta kill a baby.
Wow, that's like a mic drop and walk out. Sometimes you gotta kill a baby, he said. Yeah, okay, so you are taking the side of Jack and say basically, hey, if it was prophesied that someone was going to take away our magic, I mean, you would kill a bunch of newborns too, right? I mean, just because we gotta keep the magic, right? And Bod's an asshole. So, even though he protected those kids. Okay, that's cool. Anyone?
2 people.
2 people. Okay. Oh, he only protected 2. How many people did Jack kill, though? How many babies did he kill?
Those babies could have been assholes as well.
Those babies could have been assholes as well. That's awesome. Yeah, you should get that on a shirt.
Is there a candle for that?
I'll just throw out there that Bob was an asshole just because he's a kid, and we all go through that growing up. But I'm actually supposed to share an epitaph for my friend Marlon, who's at St. Paul, but not here today.
He's dead to us by not being here tonight.
And now he'll be known as Cute While It Lasted.
Anyone else on Jack or Jay?
Hi, David. I think it was really interesting with Jack and Jay that I saw Jay as Jack pretty early on, but that Jay was really a character for Scarlet, to show Scarlet that to make the good and evil distinction a little more fuzzy, and ultimately ending the relationship between Bob and Scarlet, because kind of to Scarlet in the end, Bob was an asshole. She killed this new father figure. He killed this new father figure in her life, because ultimately he was an evil person killing babies. But she didn't know that. She just knew him as this timid, scared little guy that gave tea and was nice to his mom, or nice to her mom. So that was interesting that, well, I saw Jay as Jack right away. Scarlet never knew that, and that was, I think, the more powerful reveal.
Thanks. Any thoughts on that? Oh, hi.
Actually, more just to the Jacks in general, and I'm Tony, by the way. I like how Neil Gaiman does this very consistently, how he leaves a lot up to the imagination. It's just a bad guy, he kills babies, and they do something, and there's an organization, and the rest of it he lets you fill in the blanks. I desperately wish Donna Tartt had let us fill in some of the blanks.
What I'm noticing about the difference between Minneapolis and St. Paul is Minneapolis is really good at holding a grudge about last month's book. And remember when I read the book you picked last month? I'm going to say something about this month's book, and then I'm going to say something again that I like it. No, I like it. It reminds us all that we've been reading these things for a while, and it's great, and totally open to anyone else want to take a shot at anything we've read in the last 12 years right now. And who feels like they've been here long? So come on, you got a shot, Mark. Yeah. No, actually, let's keep it on Neil Gaiman and this book for a while still. What else haven't we touched on with this one? Anyone want to compare it to others that you've read by him, where this ranks maybe in your Neil Gaiman readership or fandom, or whatever else fresh hand that you have? I'm excited for a fresh hand. You can always go ahead.
I was going to bring up the Dance of the Dead, and I can't remember the actual.
Macabre.
Yeah. I knew lots of people remember. I just thought that was really beautiful and also kind of unnerving how nobody would talk about it. So I just think there's a lot there, and kind of a beautiful moment that everybody participates in.
Well, it is. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's like a classic Day of the Dead, and I've talked to some people who have said that they've been in ceremonies and done something similar to this. And I think what it really points out, though, is where Silas falls in between, because he's not alive, he's not dead, he's something else. And Bob really feels bad, I think, that he knows Silas saw it, but he can't even interact in either way in this situation.
Caitlin, you were asking about favorite books. I have to say Stardust has always been my favorite. Just because I like fairy tales and I like fantasy novels, and there's something about the escape to a magical world. And like granted, he does this a lot, but I really like the thing about escape to that particular magical world that really resonates with me. And it's funny because the first time I read it, I didn't read it as a graphic novel, and then I later discovered it was a graphic novel. And that one, there's a lot of extra text, so you get the whole story as well as a graphic novel. So I have to say, there's something about that that just transports you out of reality that I love.
About the dance or about other gaming?
I have a big question about the dance. Who set the original spell or whatever that would transform both the ghosts in the graveyard and the people of the town to do this like elaborate party over some flowers blooming, and then they all forget it? Who did that?
Is it the Lady in Gray, maybe? Because does she represent death? Or any other thoughts on that? If not the Lady in Gray, who might it be?
What were the flowers? Because it kind of reminded me of Wizard of Oz and the poppies. Well, or maybe or something like that. So I wasn't sure what those were.
Any thoughts on what the flowers were? Any florists in the house?
Hi, Jeff. It's Mark. You convinced me to cross the river tonight, so there's that. I just want to kind of comment on more of a meta aspect of Neil Gaiman. You know, he started with the Sandman series, and when you write a graphic novel, you have to be collaborative with artists. And then he kind of went off on his own as an author, and he's told a lot of these stories that have been epic and perhaps derivative. But he's kind of turned another corner, and he's taking more of a collaborative approach. With this book, for example, in the illustrations, Save the Myth is another book. Forget the Myth, thank you. And also, you have this Bindle. So he's coming full circle, and I think it takes a very special kind of writer and an artist to be able to kind of do whatever he wants to do, and you have to applaud that. So, thank you, Jeff. And one of the things that I want to caution you on is...
This is for me right now.
This is just for you.
Okay, you guys...
In expectations for a creative project that is about to come out next month, I have 3 words as a cautionary tale. Jar Jar Binks. That's it.
Yeah. Hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Unfortunately, we won't. I mean, we won't see until January when we can come in and reconvene on that one. But I'm going to go in with. I do have high hopes and stuff. Anyone else on Neil Gaiman's collaborative nature, or anything else about tonight's book?
I'm Donna, and just as another little sideline on that, I think it was Tony earlier who said something about how great it is that Gaiman leaves so much to the imagination. And there's a lot of discussion on IMDb right now about the movie of this, and Ron Howard has agreed to be the director. And a lot of the conversation is about who should play which character, and apparently Alan Rickman is the favorite right now to play Silas. Yeah! But another part of that discussion is about should it be live action or stop motion or a combination. And apparently, people have been arguing one way or another and all of that. But I'm just curious, those of you, I haven't read Coraline or seen the movie, and how does Neil Gaiman translate to film, and does that enhance it or does that take away? I'm just curious.
And I would add to that, if anyone wants to comment on the fact that also American Gods is going to be a long-form series on Starz Network. So I think that's the right way to attack a book of that length. And I like the idea of taking a long book and being able to spend that many hours with it. So that'll be a live-action series on Starz of American Gods. But yeah, we saw stop-motion animation of Coraline. We've seen there's been a live-action version of Neverwhere on the BBC, and there was a live-action version with Michelle Pfeiffer of Stardust. Any thoughts on how Neil Gaiman translates to film or animation for anyone here? Of course, there's the Sandman they've been trying to do for many years. Joseph Gordon-Levitt apparently holds some rights now, and he might want to be the star of that. Any thoughts on anyone who knows it more from one medium or the other? Anyone? I see a hand over here. I see a couple of hands.
I would just say I watch Stardust on average once a month. I saw the movie first and then read the story and prefer the movie, and that might just be in order that I encountered them thing, but yeah. I just wanted to throw that out there before any haters of Stardust got to speak.
So a bit of a Michelle Pfeiffer stalker is what I'm sensing.
I read the book Stardust first and then saw the movie, and I loved both of them. Before any Stardust haters get to speak, Matt Coner.
Okay, that said, I want to remind everyone that there is a 2-volume graphic novel adaptation of Graveyard Book, and there's another group that we're friends with. Some people in the house tonight, raise your hand if you go. Beer and Comics, and they will be talking about just the graphic novel versions of these books on Wednesday the 18th. So you can join us at those Beer and Comics on Facebook. See me or Tony or other friends afterwards, and we'll bring you there too.
Listen, in the immortal words of Taylor Swift, haters are gonna hate. But I gotta say, Taylor! Yes! Taylor! I heard you, though. But I gotta say, I've been going to books and bars off and on for about 5 years, and there was a period when there were no contrarians and no haters, and it was so boring. I'm sorry, I love you, and yes, I've been waiting for you to speak the whole time! Because we need those people, because this is all about, what we like, and we're all different. And so to speak to that, I just gotta, call you out for the derivative thing. And I don't feel like you were saying it really, horrifically. Yeah, it's derivative, but, aren't there actually only 6 stories ever? Okay, 7 stories ever? The boy who Hero Man. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, and that's how we all relate to it. And I think that's what's so great about Neil Gaiman, and what makes... That's what makes Neil Gaiman so great, and makes him able to be translated into different mediums, because that's what it is. We're not retelling the same story, we're just presenting it in a different way, is because there is so much up to the imagination, so many different people can interpret it in different ways. And I think the reason why his stuff is so good when it goes beyond a book or a graphic novel is because he gets good people to work with. And I say this, and this is total humble brag, went to film school, know how hard it is to adapt things. You get the best people to work on it because you have great source material. And then it's flipping awesome. I totally trailed off. I had a point. Sorry. Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift was your first point, which was awesome, because it got a bunch of high kicks out of me, so I haven't done those in a while, except behind the bar earlier tonight, so for me, not a while, so I haven't done it in an hour, so I just had to get that stretch out. Feels good to do it in here with this many more people and stuff. Yes, again, in case you're new here and you don't know, these are not what books Jeff loves and recommends, and sometimes I don't like them as much, and I usually wait to rate them on Goodreads or other places so that I don't stop people from reading it or coming to talk about it, because we share. I mean, I do like this book. I would rank it on what I would say not as much as many others probably. Neil Gaiman I've read. I rate it probably higher than the other two that we've read for Books and Bars. I absolutely love the Sandman series. That was a really big thing for me to finally read that only in the last year with Beer and Comics again. But I want to read more. I mean, I want to read more by Neil Gaiman. He's not for everyone, certainly, but and definitely don't ever think that you can't express it. I love that we're disagreeing on it and stuff. So Ashley is right. Hate it, love it, and definitely quote Taylor Swift when making your comment, and you'll get more out of me. How you doing? You feeling 22? That's some deep old cuts by Taylor there. Okay, who else? This is going to play great on the podcast. But it was like, I think something happened and someone said they were scared. And then they're going to want to go to the event in person and be like, hey, we're talking to Neil Gaiman. People were really frightened by the moderator. That part's not true. Broken glass, I see some. Hi. Yeah.
Even with my hand up, sometimes you can't see me. I was just thinking about where I read this. I've read a lot of Neil Gaiman, and I actually read this immediately when it came out because that was my stalking Neil Gaiman period. I had just moved here and realized he was right over the border, and it was like the greatest thing in the entire world. So I was maybe not stalking him in Wisconsin, just waiting for him here. But I love this book, and I think the reason I think there are other Neil Gaiman books I like better, but I like this one so much because I think his children's books are actually scarier than his adult books. They're a little darker, and he's actually commented on it before in interviews saying like kids want that darker stuff, they want to chew on that. So I enjoy that. And my other thought is every time I hear him read this or read it, I always just think he is Silas. It's like him putting himself into the story because Silas is so removed and isn't really one or the other, but that's what I think about Silas.
And if you read Salmon, you definitely think of him as Morpheus. It's hard not to. I mean, really, sometimes he's drawn just like that in the books. I would say there's a great quote that I'm going to paraphrase heavily from G.K. Chesterton, who is actually a character slightly in Sandman, but he's a real-life author that Gaiman was influenced by. And it's this idea that books don't introduce kids to dragons. Kids know that dragons exist, but these stories, these fairy tales, help kids find a way to defeat the dragons. So it's not like anyone that thinks, you're introducing something that's too frightening to kids, or like this is what's making them scared. Kids are afraid they're afraid of what's in the closet. I mean, my kids won't go upstairs if no one else is up there, like by themselves. That kind of thing. So kids are afraid. So maybe these stories help them overcome some of that they see in the fairy tale nature. Any other thoughts or comments? Anything we need to get out tonight? Love this room. Love all you guys piling in here. Please get a growler. It's such a good deal. You get a free $5 off, so you get the first growler container for free, and then you bring it back to Indeed next time. You get it filled up again. Because guess what? There's going to be more next times. I'm so happy to tell you guys, if you hadn't heard, that Kayla, Emil, and the Indeed family here is inviting us to be here regularly. So, yes. We're going to be, this is our new Minneapolis home, okay? So second Tuesday of every month, we'll get a food truck outside. There'll be rotating food trucks. We'll let you know who it is and the time and all that. But I'm really excited. So thanks to Kayla and Emil and everyone at Indeed for having us. And Subtext is our new book sponsor, Stellar. So please support. And you can get, you guys, I'm so excited for next month. If anyone has been coming here for any amount of time, there are a couple things you can probably say about me, Jeff Kamen. He likes Star Wars, and lately he talks a lot about Taylor Swift. It's kind of weird. But I thought he stopped Neil Gaiman, but no, I think it's actually, no. You want to know what I'm a freak about? I'm a freak about Star Wars. I mean, this defines my generation. So this is huge for me. I'm halfway through this book. I'm absolutely loving it. You will learn stuff you never knew. I'm going to drop a slight spoiler on you. I don't know how much they go into it, but I never knew that Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher hooked up back in 1976. And there's a nice little section on that. Yeah. At least it wasn't Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher. So read this. It's perfect time because the movie comes out December 17th, December 18th. and then join us and see the movie. But this is a really, really fun, exhaustive read. It's going to make you want to rewatch the movies, and then let's have fun with it. Let's do some trivia. Let's show up dressed up. We're going to play some music. I'll dress up. I promise that. I'll be dressed up at all the events for this one. And then January's book is The Circle by Dave Eggers. So you can get those both from Matt. Check us out, you guys. Come back next month. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.